Here are 10 signs your self-esteem is improving, because building self-esteem is not a quick fix. It's something that takes time and patience and a lot of effort. But these signs are going to help you acknowledge your progress and know what to strive for, because when you know what the goal is, it's much easier to achieve. But first, my name is Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. So what is self-esteem? Self-esteem is basically the ability to take care of yourself, your emotional, physical, spiritual needs, here's the kicker, without delay. So when you have a need, you handle it. You don't wait, you don't procrastinate, you handle it. And that's a really important sign, because when we feel good about ourselves, our relationships and our life reflect that. When we struggle with low self-esteem, our relationships tend to be more of a struggle because we don't feel like we deserve better. So let's get started. The first one is you're more motivated to take care of yourself. You're tired of doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, putting everybody's needs before yours. You're finally at the point where you're like, okay, it needs to be my turn. And even if it's just a little bit of movement, that's a really good sign, because when we don't take care of ourselves, it's really hard to feel happy. And it's really hard to feel like we're being taken care of because we're neglecting ourselves. So this is a super important sign for building self-esteem. The next one is mistakes no longer trigger blame or shame. So when you make a mistake, which let's face it, all of us will because we're human, you don't beat yourself up over it as much. You allow yourself some grace and dignity that it's okay to be imperfect, because everybody is. Now this one takes longer to develop, and I noticed that for me, I really had to dig into my childhood around this, because there's a lot of old messages there around making mistakes that I had to look at. So if this one takes a little longer, that's okay. If you're working on your self-esteem right now, I want you to hit ditto in the comments, because I am right there with you, supporting you. So the next one is when things don't go your way, you don't lose hope. You trust the process, because instead of getting stuck in gloom and doom thinking, which is a sign of depression and sometimes low self-esteem, you have a little bit of hope that, you know what, things are gonna work out in the long run. Because part of life and part of recovery is learning how to deal with life when life doesn't go our way. But that's a huge sign that your self-esteem is improving, that you can bounce back a little bit quicker when things don't go your way. The next one is you don't take things personally all the time. This one was huge for me. I took things personally all the time in my recovery for a long time, longer than I care to admit, because it was really hard for me to shift that focus from what other people thought of me to what I thought of me. But that's what this takes, because I was always looking for that validation outside of myself instead of learning how to give it to myself. You're not going to be taking everything personally, because you have a sense that what other people are saying is more about them and what their struggle is right now than a reflection of who you are. And that really shows that your self-esteem is improving. The next one is your self-talk sounds more loving and kind. It sounds more like you're talking to yourself as if you were a dear friend. Now, our self-talk is basically that dialogue we have 24/7 going on in our minds that we never share out loud. But when those thoughts are nasty, like, oh, life isn't fair, this sucks, I'm so stupid, all of those thoughts, of course, make us feel bad about ourselves, because they're focusing on what isn't going well versus what is going well. So when you notice that you're starting to cut yourself some slack, or to say things like, you know what, it's okay, you did the best you could, you'll try again tomorrow, that's a really good sign that your self-esteem is improving. The next one is you're beginning to want to set boundaries. You may not be ready to actually set them, but you're wanting to. You're really close to wanting to say no, or do less, or remove yourself from a toxic situation, because you realize that you're worth it. Because part of low self-esteem is feeling like we're not worth it. We stay in bad relationships. We let people mistreat us because we don't know how to get out of it. And boundaries are a huge way to protect ourselves and our self-esteem. So when you have that desire and you're starting to set boundaries, that really tells me that you realize that your needs count and that it's okay for you to speak up and advocate for yourself. Now, if you're currently working on improving your self-esteem, hit yes in the comments because I really want to support you. You're right on track. The next one is you realize that not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. I know for me in my recovery, this crushed me. I wanted people to like me, even if I didn't like them, which made no sense, but that was how badly I needed their approval. But if you notice that you're starting to let go of that a little bit, like even people you don't like, how important is it that they don't like you? Especially if it's somebody that you just don't care for anyway. Maybe that's okay, that not everybody is going to like us, and that isn't a reflection of who you are as a person. That's a really exciting one. The next one is when someone gaslights you, meaning that they make you question your reality and make you feel crazy, you don't doubt yourself. You actually stop and go, wait a minute, that doesn't feel right. Something's off here because the sky isn't green, right? You know better. You know your truth. Now, it doesn't mean this isn't a complicated, difficult issue to deal with in relationship, especially if you're in a relationship with a narcissist. But it's really important for you to be able to question that gaslighting behavior and say, this doesn't feel right. This is not my truth. And to let the other person have their truth without trying to change it. That's a very powerful way of starting to feel good about yourself because you're starting to trust your own perceptions. The next one is your relationships are getting healthier. This is huge because when you start to love yourself a little bit more, you start to realize that you deserve healthier relationships and you're willing to do the work to get them. So you're willing to look at your behavior and you're willing to look at who you're picking to be in relationship with. Because when we feel bad about ourselves and our self-esteem is low, we tend not to pick at all. We tend to let other people pick us. And that's dangerous because we're not picking people who are necessarily good for us. Another thing with this is that toxic people are no longer as attractive to you. That's really a sign of healthy self-esteem because you don't want to be hurt anymore in your relationships. You want to be treated with respect and you're willing to do a little bit more to get that. And the next sign is that you can let yourself relax without feeling lazy. This is a big one, especially if you're codependent. A lot of times we feel like we have to do in order to be productive and have value. But there's just as much value letting yourself unplug and unwind and basically let yourself relax and do nothing sometimes. Because that's part of being human, is letting ourselves take a day off when we're sick or take a lunch break instead of working through lunch. Doing things that allow rest, because that's how we rejuvenate and that's how we actually keep that self-esteem, because we're letting ourselves, again, when we go back to the definition, take care of ourselves without delay. So if you're wanting more help with self-esteem, go watch my video on how to love yourself more. Thanks so much.